Welcome back to You've Been Schooled. I'm Chris Lopez, here to talk to you about some of the important headlines going into this weekend's NFL Draft. Naturally, a lot of the attention is focused around the top two overall selections traded for by the Los Angeles Rams and Philadelphia Eagles respectively. Now, most people assume that they'll be drafting quarterbacks with these picks, which puts both franchises in a very peculiar situation. The Los Angeles Rams find themselves in a similar situation to a few years back, except they were on the opposite side, gaining a lot of assets while trading away the rights to the second overall pick, which eventually became Robert Griffin III on the Washington Redskins. Now, the Redskins didn't necessarily benefit from that trade, as RG3 never won them a playoff game, and he's now currently playing for the Cleveland Browns. However, the Rams still felt it was the right time to trade up and draft a future signal caller, whether or not that be Jared Goff out of California or Carson Wentz out of North Dakota State. Whoever the Rams don't draft, the Philadelphia Eagles will likely end up with. But this trade has already caused a rift with current quarterback Sam Bradford, who's already voiced his displeasure with the trade, as well as allegedly demanded a trade from the Eagles and dropped out of voluntary offseason workouts. Now, Sam Bradford hasn't produced necessarily on the field, but the Eagles did recently ink him to an extension. And the decision of whether or not they'll be playing with Sam Bradford or a rookie quarterback going forward, that decision might be needed to make. They might need to make that decision a little earlier than they expected. Now, with all the attention focused on the quarterbacks, people are wondering who's inevitably going to fall down, with a lot of eyes focused on Laremy Tunsil, someone who was at the beginning of the draft board slotted in one of those top two selections. He's a prototypical Pro Bowl left tackle, someone who can both handle the blind side and pass, as well as dominate in the rush. And a lot of teams are wondering whether or not they'll be able to trade up a little later in the first round to possibly get this tackle and shore up that offensive line. Now, speaking of players who might fall, there are a lot of noteworthy sleepers and big names in this draft. Starting off with Braxton Miller, wide receiver out of the Ohio State University. Braxton Miller made the move from quarterback to wide receiver during his senior year, and it showed the entire country that he could be a playmaker who could ultimately get some time at the next level. Now, he's still a raw wide receiver, but if he's trained correctly, the playmaking ability he has on the outside could ultimately prove a great value in the later rounds, such as the second, third, or fourth. Other big names include Shalik Calhoun, defensive end out of Michigan State, who was one of the best athletes on one of the best defenses in the last college season. However, there are a lot of talented pass rushers going into the draft this year, and Shalik has been the one that's kind of fallen down on draft boards for really no noticeable reason. Teams could select him as late as the late second or early third round and could inevitably be getting a great value out of him on any defense that he joins. Another possible sleeper is Sua Cravens, our very own from USC. He's one of those hybrids between a linebacker and a safety that fits into really any NFL defense because of his versatility. A lot of teams with the increasing prevalence of the passing game in the NFL are looking for these versatile athletes to stick on defense in order to make plays in both the pass and the run. People were impressed with his versatility playing for USC this last season, and Sua Cravens has shown his athleticism at his pro day as well as the NFL Combine, and he could be one of the biggest sleepers going into this next season. Now, on the other side of sleepers, there are also a lot of busts going into this NFL draft, with a lot of character concerns, failed drug tests, and the normal things that you see going into any NFL draft. One of the big names that I see is Vernon Hargreaves III, who's allegedly already failed a drug test, though no substantial facts into whether or not that's true, but nevertheless, he might lack the size and athleticism to ultimately succeed at the next level. Despite this, he's been mocked in many NFL mock drafts, as well as noted by scouts to be in the top 15 players in this draft. However, he only stands 5 foot 10 inches tall, and he doesn't have the kind of elite speed to really play around that. He has some good instincts and has made some great plays for Florida in the last year, but I'm not sure that this will transcend once he's up against bigger, more physical wide receivers who are also good enough to beat him on the deep ball. He doesn't possess any over-the-top athleticism, so whether or not he'll be able to survive, I think, is up for debate. And when you're going to take a guy in the top 15 who might not be able to survive, there might be a big problem there. Now, some late-round sleepers who teams could ultimately capitalize on, such as teams like the Los Angeles Rams are really looking at, include guys like Kelvin Taylor, running back for Florida this season, who was really their workhorse, a guy who, once Will Grier went down, his season was largely limited, but he's the son of a former running back, Fred Taylor, and he showed some great potential at Florida this season. I think that ultimately the tough season that he had, he really showed his character and his ability to stick with the team's overall goal. Now, we've seen a lot of running backs go down with injury lately. I think that Calvin Taylor will ultimately get the opportunity to start, and he might hold on to that starting job and be a future player in the NFL. One of the last people I'm looking at late in the rounds is another USC Trojan, Kayvon Seymour, who played pretty well for the Trojans this past season, as well as really blowing up the combine, running a sub-4.40 on his official time. Now, he's shown athleticism as well as a big body enough to really play with these NFL wide receivers. I think that in the right defense with the right coaching, someone could really groom him to be a great player at the next level. There's a lot of interesting things going into this weekend, and as always, the NFL Draft is the most important event except for the games that are actually played. And football nerds like me just can't stop watching. So, that's all for me with You've Been Schooled. I'll see you next time, and fight on.